Welcome back. You're still watching Citizen Extra with me, Fred Indimuli. Now, the NASA Brigade threatened to boycott the elections if a court ruling does not go its way. 84 days to the elections, what impact does such a statement have? Is this the best way that NASA can approach this particular dispute? In studio, we do have Joy Mdibo, analyst Rayo Cheng, and Gabriel Muduma, analyst as well. Good morning. Now, you've all heard that statement by NASA. Now, the greatest concern, of course, some of the issues that we're discussing, some of it is before court, so we cannot go deep into the details. But such a statement threatening to boycott the elections, we are foreseeing a problem here because, yes, the courts, the judiciary could decide either way. We cannot determine what the judiciary decides. Joy, do you think this is the best way for NASA to approach this dispute?
One of the problems we've had in this country for a long time is when you have leaders who are grandstanding when such an important topic is on the table. By the time a party calls for boycotting of the polls, it should be a last resort measure when you've tried what you need to do and it has come to a head. And in this situation, you can understand where we are coming from. The allegations of vote rigging and vote buying and vote stealing and vote stuffing have been the bane of our elections from very many for a long time. But now in this situation, we see in these elections we have two major players. You have Jubilee and you have NASA. If they don't participate in the elections, we have no quote-unquote credible alternative. And therefore this is a very unfortunate statement, because if for some reason they go through with their threat and we have no objection to no credible objection to the Jubilee government come August, then the people of Kenya will be left with no alternative, with no choice, with nowhere to go but to Jubilee. Therefore, I think it is very unfortunate, because we are so far seeing progress towards having a credible election. I don't think that if one court decision does not go our way, then our only alternative is this. I find it to be a little bit rash, and I wish they had tempered it with some reasoning.
Yes. But Gabriel Muduma, of course, NASA could be having genuine concerns, and probably they should be addressed. But threatening to boycott the elections at this time, do you think that's the right way to go about it?
Thank you, Fred. You see, observingly, if you just landed in this country, you'd actually think that NASA is in competition for the August election with IEBC, and somebody like Chairman Chebukati, the presidential candidate for IEBC, because really there has been too much going back and forth between NASA and IEBC. My major concern is that we have really infiltrated IEBC to an area whereby they cannot conduct or they cannot do their work effectively. I think for people who have historically said that they stand for justice, number one, and number two, for independent institutions to remain independent, you know, unhindered, or not having an underarm trying to twist these independent institutions, it's very funny for somebody to come out of their common and their all along belief that all of a sudden you do not believe that the court system will issue, they'll come with something that is not advantageous to you. I think, Fred, that is a very bad statement coming from leaders who have, from a very long time, you know, justified that why they remain to fight for the justice in this republic is to ensure that institutions that are independent remain independent. So if we are talking about that and we believe that to heart, then it is the high time we allow the courts to decide the fate of that particular rule. Doesn't matter what they say, whether they are for it or not for it. I think we need to respect the outcome of the court. And Fred, this has been a long-standing issue between IEBC and NASA. We started by saying all commissioners needed to change. That took place. The Hassan-led commission left office. And I remember telling somebody that, you see, every time you succumb to pressures of people without thinking the grand or the ripple effects, then you're putting yourself between a rock and a hard place. And that is what has happened, because Fred, look at it this way. I told someone, when you give a mouse a cookie, tomorrow it will come for a glass of milk. That is what is happening in this case. Yes.
When Rio Cheng, of course, NASA yesterday indicated that that was their campaign launch, and that's why they were doing it in Nakuru, because of the historic history that Nakuru has in terms of launching political drives. Do you think that that's the kind of rhetoric that should kick off a campaign?
Fred, we must understand that NASA is very strong in the field, but very lethargic in terms of the internal intrinsic strategy. But now, in terms of this matter that my colleagues have weighed in, I think we are aware and we take cognizance of the fact of Article 86 that is very clear, subsection A, that talks about the transparency that is needed, the threshold that is needed in these elections. Then it goes to B, C, and D, that talks about how the Constitution talks about how results are to be managed by at the polling stations, by the presiding officers, by the returning officers. So I'd said this earlier, that in terms of this battle that IEBC is engaging itself on, actually this should not be their priority. But now, let's go to the fact. IEBC has got a constitutional right. They have gone to court. I think when a matter is sub judice on this matter, the matter is in the hands of the judges. And I think also court, in terms of, as much as we agree, there is mistrust on the value chain, political value chain. But I think NASA has got a responsibility to also make sure that if they believe, because we know Article 86 is clear, and even me, I have a personal position on what should be what the ruling should be. I think at this point, also to enhance and give respect and give a little confidence to our institutions, I think they should have waited. Then they wait and they see what are the courts going to do to decide. Then after that they move ahead, because they move on. Because when they do that, and they do that bravado and just thumping, then there can be an illusion that NASA is not for the good rule of law, which they want to violate. And I think that may also work against their image.
Now, Joy, of course, we heard even one of the principals saying that probably the judiciary should not be trusted, because President Uhuru Kenyatta said when he was in Kisii that yes, they gave a job to the CJ. Of course, the judiciary has come out to deny all that and to clarify on that particular matter. But when NASA decide to make that a campaign issue, don't you see as if we're running a risk of creating mistrust in the judiciary? NASA did the same with the IEBC. We had to go through a whole process of changing that electoral agency. Now, once you create a mistrust in the judiciary as well, don't you think 84 days to go, that's a huge problem?
You know, I like what Gabriel said, that you give a mouse a cookie, tomorrow they come for a glass of milk. Because this is what we have. You've got three arms of government. You have the legislature, you've got the executive, and you've got the judiciary. And these three arms of government are created to have what you call checks and balances. So if one is excessive, then the other can be used to tame the other. So there is a balance of power. All three arms of government are very critical in the running of a credible society, because they're the ones who used to maintain law and order. When you have a situation where people are using the arms of government not to check and balance the power in government, but to advance personal interests, in this case wanting to access power in an electoral process, and you use the judiciary as a means to an end, then you find that when it does not work, that's why you revert to saying, okay, fine, if the matter does not go my way, then I will work this other way. What that does, it undermines the credibility, and also lends credence to the fact that the court processes cannot be trusted. Over the last 5 years, starting with Chief Justice Mutunga, now with Chief Justice Maraga, the judiciary has worked very hard to clean up their image, to do a lot of work to sensitize judicial officers. I know for a fact that the Judiciary Training Institute has been training not only the magistrates and the judges who are going to handle election petitions, have also been conducting the trainings towards the LSK, so that even the lawyers, when they go to court, know how to conduct election petitions quickly and credibly. All the laws are applicable, all the processes, so the process is quicker and more credible. Now, with all these things being put in place, when somebody uses one showcase, one case, and uses it as a test case for the entire credibility, I think is a bit unfair, because we've gotten to a place where we have to strengthen our institutions. And even as patriots, we have to love this country more than we love what we perceive to be our right. I want a credible institution, and I want a credible process, as much as the NASA leaders do. Yes. But I will not be party, or I will not stand for a situation where you deliberately undermine the credibility of the judiciary, so that even for future, when, let's say, an election petition arises, people have no faith in. And those
election petitions will come August, and probably then NASA will need the judiciary to make a determination on 1 or 2 cases. Bwana Gabriel Muduma, isn't NASA shooting itself in the foot by doing what they're doing right now?
Sadly so. Sadly so. Number one, you've had, like I mentioned earlier, you've had issues with almost every institution that has been tabled to be independent. And it started out, you know, with IBC, EACC, same thing. You've had issues with the police. You know, you've had issues with the Director of Criminal Investigations. Come all the way now to the the justice system. So really, when push comes to shove, and you're looking at people who would look at your matter constructively, you already have an issue. It is the same thing I was saying the other day. I'll use a narrative that Raila Odinga likes using. It's the same thing as football. You know, you cannot keep accusing every referee who's brought to the pitch. You cannot use the same methodology you used to the last one. Okay, let's assume one of them was skewed. You know, you cannot derivatively use that cliche to say even the other one who comes. I mean, you are the vanguards who said you needed change in IEBC. And they came, you came with a name. I think both Jubilee and CORD at that time, they coined a name which they called a legal political bypass. I don't know what that was. And, you know, they changed the constitution to allow for them to sit down and choose members of the steering committee that we have in IEBC. What changed, you know, what changed, Fred, between what we saw, the team when they sat down and gave us a team, and now? Why can we not trust IEBC to do the job that we have allowed? And, you know, we are paying them. The taxpayer is actually the one who is running this show. Why don't we just allow? Let us have the faith, small if you will. Give IEBC. We have already agreed it is an independent institution. Let us allow them that little faith for them to be able to conduct this primary. You know, we cannot, and I insist, we cannot be at loggerheads anytime. I don't care whether it's Jubilee or whether it is NASA. You cannot be at loggerheads with a body that is gearing to run a serious general election, which, you know, and we can see, if anything goes wrong, you can see the ramifications that can befall on our country. We are coming from 2007. I mean, that's just 10 years ago removed. I don't believe we've done so much, Fred, to ensure that what we saw in 2007 does not take place in 2017. I mean, the same cries that we had in 2007 are starting to get repeated. When you start hearing people talk about mass actions, and I hate that name, I hate that you know, instance, and I hope we don't get there. But I think it is time for both Jubilee and NASA to give the faith, the small faith that anybody can come up with to IEBC. Let us allow them to conduct this election unhindered.
Yes, but Ray, NASA must really feel that the case is genuine. That yes, they have fundamental issues they've raised with regard to certain issues, and that is what they are in dispute with, and as far as IEBC is concerned. But do they have another route? Is there any other way that this dispute can be resolved 84 days to D-Day?
I think what we've been saying, Fred, to all the players is that there should be goodwill in this process. And that goodwill should be both in the IEBC and the major political players. So for a free and a credible elections, we need goodwill of all parties. On this, in terms of, as a matter of fundamental fact, if you look at the construct through which CORD is going to court, actually, I'm really agreeing, and I'd highlighted Article 86, that talks about where elections results are to be announced. And that's what CORD is saying, that this is very clear. Why is IEBC saying? Because Fred, we are forgetting one thing. IBC is not blocked that the elections are not going to be announced at the national level. The Parliamentary Select Committee that Gabriel has talked about, the political bypass that was put in place, came up with the framework through which we would ensure that, you remember the Form 16A and Bs, that you realize that they had to be traveling some 2 days to arrive at the National Tallying Center, and that's where results were being lost. And that's what we are saying in terms of accountability. This is what NASA is saying in terms of accountability, because what the Parliamentary Select Committee said, that before results are even announced at the polling stations, Fred, all the parties are going to agree and they're going to sign when they announce. The only problem that I have with NASA is the manner in which they want to push this, because just the way you've said telepathically, Fred, that if they do that, then the same IBC is the same institution that they also need moving forward. The same judiciary is the same institution that we need forward. However, their case is according to my position, I really strongly believe that they're right. But then to enhance that goodwill, they must have a little bit of decency and sanitize their lobbying mechanism. So I think, Fred, before we talk about is there any other way, why don't we wait for the court to rule? Then we talk from there.
But then again, when such disputes arise so close to the election, Joy, what else can we do? Because do we even have enough time for dispute arbitration and resolution between now and election day for such a major issue?
One thing that makes me feel sad is that we don't use what is available to us to make this process easier for us. Let me just put this in context. The South Koreans impeached their president, went ahead and conducted an election, and now they have a new president within 3-4 weeks, while we've still been going through this process. The French got to an election, had a runoff, now have a new president. We are still going through this entire process. The British, the Prime Minister had a working holiday over Easter, came back, called for snap elections, ratified by Parliament. They're going to have the elections in June, while we are still going through this process. So clearly the problem is not time. The problem is our systems are so cumbersome and so intricate that it makes it difficult for us to move forward at an acceptable pace. In my opinion, we have gotten to a place where we have so many people, for example, we are electing on a single day. Why have we not had the conversation about deconstructing the elections? Do for the MCAs this year, next year do for the members of parliament, another year run the presidential, and let it just keep rolling over. Why haven't we gotten to a place where we've embraced technology credibly and fully, to an extent where results can be done real time? They were calling the election in France at 7 p.m. local time, and our 9 o'clock news here were able to call it on the very same day that the French voted. Look at us, we can stay even for 4 or 5 days waiting for results because we're looking for, as Ray said, manual papers to come from where, and the electronic systems that keep failing and coming back up. As Kenyans, we need to just bite the bullet and say, look, this is something we have to live with, this is the process we have to make work. And how can we make it work? Let us just get the political goodwill to put the laws in place, because our legislators, unfortunately, when they do this legislation, when they make these laws, they are putting themselves there. They're thinking, how will this affect me when I want to run for the election? And so we've been unable to have credible election laws that can stick, because they always leave that little loophole, that little gap that they can exploit when they want the benefits to come back to them. So I think as a nation, we need to come to a place where we have a conversation about not the timelines. Those timelines right now are important because we've got so much to do.
Yes.
But even the disputes are there because the systems are not credible. We have to look at our systems and get systems that work. Rigging used to be the way of the past, of how people ensure that they got back into power. Right now, I was listening to the MCA nominee for Jubilee in Kilgoris, Lemayan. He was speaking to Citizen Radio this morning. And there's one thing he said. He said one thing politicians have not noticed is that Kenya now has a shortage of fools. Kenyans have gotten to a place they're becoming wiser. Those tricks don't work anymore. And if a process is not credible, it will automatically have rejection. So we need to audit our systems and just come up with the latest and most credible system to do everything in a timiest manner.
And is a part of cleaning up that system probably coming up with a dispute resolution mechanism towards election time, that not every time we have to rush to court, Gabriel?
Exactly.
Actually, Fred, let me start by agreeing with what Joy has said, and this is something that I've called for quite a long time now. I actually think I've also written papers about it, and this is where you kind of divorce and separate the way we do our elections. What is wrong from having a presidential election this year? And then, you know, we've mirrored the workability of the U.S. government, the way it's structured and everything. I mean, look at our Senate, look at our governors. There's something similar to that. But what we've not taken from the U.S. is the credibility of their process. When I talk about the credibility of their process, what is wrong with us moving? Like 2018, you'll see, U.S., I mean, we just came from 2016 conducting a presidential election. 2018, you're expecting Congress and Senate to conduct the election. What is wrong for us doing that? I mean, are we saying there's some element of credibility that's going to be lost? I think those are some of the things that Joy is talking about, workability. And I think it's the high time. You know, if we want to progress forward, just the other day we are starting, and many people don't know this way, but today we are starting a new curriculum. Yeah. Why are we starting a new curriculum? Because we have seen the one that we've had for a long time is not working. So why push on, Fred, with a system that's not working? I think it's the high time we sit down and see what we can do to ensure that we don't go through all these processes that we are going through, which are murky. But coming to your question, Fred, I think we need to set up a good mechanism where election grievances can be hard determined at, you know, with speed and also with the efficiency that it deserves, because that as well has also created very bad blood. I mean, you have heard NASA saying that if we lose this election, we are not going to quote, and I quote, they have said they are not going to quote. Why? Because of what happened in 2013. They have put it around themselves that, you know what, it does not matter what happens, the justice system in this country will never rule anything to our favor, which is a very wrong attitude and mentality. So if they feel so disgruntled and feel that there's a disservice done to them by the judicial system, I think it's good to give them room to have, they can identify any other person to where they can take the forum for their grievances. And again, I'm not saying this to mean that they've already lost the 2017 election, no. But we need to set up a mechanism where grievances are heard and determined in record time. Failure to which I think we are going to be running into the same problems over and over and over again, Fred.
Yes. Finally, Ray, let's say the court rules, the ruling by the court doesn't go in their favor, NASA. Of course, they threatened that they will boycott the elections, but do you think that's just an empty threat? Do you think they can actually boycott these elections, even if the court doesn't rule in their favor?
I think boycotting the elections would be, it would be a huge crisis. You see, we've got two horses in this race, and the independent candidature, the bloc, we've called them, they are mules, or if then they become
themselves camels,
then we have two unicorns. so I think the gap that can be there, and we remember, Fred, and Gabriel has rightly put it, that when NASA said that if they don't win the elections, they are not going to go to court. And I've always said, it's not that I'm a pessimist, but this country is not, we are likely to have a big post-election violence than never before, because stakes are very high. This is the first time that we are doing an inauguration of an election whereby we've never had gubernatorial elections coming now in full force the way we've done. We've never seen, you've seen the large numbers of MCAs. And I think Joy loves this nation, and she really even feels some of these big wage bill that we're having in terms of the political elites. We should even be reducing these numbers. So I think what would happen, there would be a big crisis. And what I always say, and my colleagues would agree, the two principals, actually they are very good friends. And even if you look at their chemistry, their body language, these are people who love each other. So if Uhuru and Raila love this nation so much, I think they just need to show that goodwill from both sides. And I know they are foot soldiers. Sometimes, Fred, their foot soldiers are the problem. You look at the foot soldiers around Raila Odinga, you've heard about cartels that are in ODM, you've heard people saying there are cartels in Jubilee who are dishing, and the president coming and Raila coming and saying that, you know what, we want this. So if these two people, we should know that the responsibility of making sure that we have a free and fair elections lies on how they mobilize their foot soldiers and allow that goodwill process.
And of course, it should be noted that the dispute is at the presidential level. Yet the elections go as far down as MCA level. We have governors, senators, members of the National Assembly. Yet this particular dispute has a potential of messing up the entire process. Joy, what is the way forward? Do you think if what would happen if the High Court or the Court of Appeal ruling doesn't go in the favor of NASA?
Like Ray has said, if they decide to boycott, it will be very foolhardy of them and very unfortunate for Kenyans, because we have come to a place where right now, unfortunately or fortunately, we've got two major players. Of course, there are the other independent candidates and other presidential hopefuls, but if you look at it realistically, you've got two major players. If you remove one major player from the equation, then in my opinion, they will have voted for the other major player to take office. And if that's what they want, then they can go ahead and do it. But looking at your question, when you're talking about dispute resolution, in this day and age, if you're looking to go to a court process, you know it is adversarial. And you know there's a 50-50 chance of you getting your way or not getting your way. That's how the cookie crumbles. And so if we are going to go to the court process, we have to be ready to accept the results. Unfortunately now, if you go to the court process and you issue a threat that wants to dictate to the court how you want the outcome to be, the courts are human beings. Sometimes they may not take that too kindly, and they may decide to teach you a lesson and just see whether you will call your bluff. So the tactic on NASA's part, I'm not sure is very encouraging. But also alluding to what you talked about before, where Jubilee feels that they gave the KC an office and so they are sort of beholden to them. That's the sort of talk that has also not been very helpful. We all watched the process of appointing the next CJ, and we saw it, it was broadcast for all of us to see. Those of us who are lawyers were sitting and looking at the situation critically. When the results came out, you'll realize even those who sounded opposed to the process were like, you know what, that was actually a very good decision. So I don't see how the KC helped in that process in any way, other than the fact that Judge Maraga had to belong somewhere. So even in disputes, there are some of these things we try to insert that are not helpful and are not even factual. We need to come to a place where we can break it down to the barest minimum, so that it's a clear picture for all to see. Like, for example, using a process that is not a court process, because court processes are by design very, very convoluted. But if you can have a straightforward, because in the Constitution the IEBC is given the mandate to decide electoral decisions. If it can be black and white pap thing rather than a formal hearing, would find it's a much easier and better way to move forward with everybody on board.
And probably should also look at the role that IEBC is playing in this, because it's actually IEBC that has moved to court. Do you think it was right for them to actually appear to be antagonizing either side, that probably they should have tried to use a different route in achieving what they wanted instead of a court process? Gabriel?
I wish there was another avenue, Fred. I really wish there was, because like I'm telling you, I don't like the back and forth between IEBC and NASA. And not only NASA, let's just put it, you know, any political party. IEBC at this point, you know, I've always said this and I'll repeat again, I believe, in my own view, we are time bad. You're talking about 83 days to an election, and yet you still have people going to court, taking one another to court. So that just tells you, should anything happen, then we are heading, you know, to have a crisis. Now, one thing I'll agree with what Ray said, that is that if anything does not go as is hoped, then we are going to see a serious civil strife than the one we saw in 2007. What takes me, or what pushes me to think the same way as Ray is talking about, is in fact nobody else than Johansen Kriegler. It is him who said, if you do not take these issues into consideration, and he's not just talking about, you know, just sitting down and having a cup of tea, you know, what you call the barbershop talk or what you call the cafe shop. You're talking about having a serious agenda on how elections in this nation will be conducted. If you do not take this serious stride to about 2 years, 24 months to be exact, into an election, then you may end up seeing something more serious than what you saw in 2007. In fact, Ray, he called it 2007 will be a Christmas party. So it is Kriegler who said that. So you see, we have played down with it. The issues of Agenda 4, inclusivity, everything that we were told, we have done nothing. Yet we are coming close, Fred, to doing another general election, which has a lot of stakes. Like my good friend Ray has said, you have governors, you have MCS, you have legislators, you have senators. All this will make this situation more murkier. So the issue is, if we had another body, I don't know what we would call it, would we give it the reasonable doubt for it to conduct, or be able to sit down and look at what everybody is grieving about and be able to sort it in a record time? Would we give them and allow them the space and the faith to work what we have bestowed them to do? If we have not given it to IEBC, what gives credence that we can give another body?
And finally, Ray, do you think IEBC is feeling like they're unable to carry out their job, and probably they had no other way, that they're between a rock and a hard place, and the only other way was to go to court?
You see, IEBC is a creation of the political bypass. and you know very well, Fred, these guys came late, and it was a formation of the two big boys are the people who brought us here. They're the people who brought this IEBC, and actually NASA was at the forefront. So in terms of where we have reached, sometimes IEBC is on autopilot. And Fred, in terms of what is needed, you've heard what Kabira has pointed out. Imagine we have the MCAs, we have the governors, we have all. Actually, we need the likes of IEBC, 3 of them put together to run these elections. And you look at this point, IEBC is still going to court to contest on a constitutional matter, which let me not preempt what the courts are going to say, which if we read Article 86, Fred, we are going to know what the courts may say regarding that. But now you look at where the energies are, sometimes we get worried. And on Kriegler's report that has been brought out here very clearly, that we are not taking elections seriously in Africa. I think, Fred, I would confidently say that we are not taking elections seriously.
Thank you so much.
Very high.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much, Ray Ocheng, Joy Mdivo, and Gabriel Muthuma, helping us understand what exactly is going on now that NASA has threatened to boycott the elections if a court ruling does not go its way. Now we want to head out to Mombasa, the port of Mombasa, where Transport PS Paul Mwangi is addressing the media with regard to the arrival of a shipment of maize. Let's listen in.
Alpha Grain Millers, location in Athi River. That means that GBHL is pumping it out into its silo and pumping it into its silos from the ship and out into the loaders, into trucks. So we have 11,486 bags of maize, each 90 kilograms, going to Alpha Grain Millers in Athi River, already collected and our distribution. Eastern Flour Mills Limited, location Machakos, 1,594 bags of maize, and on to the last one, Pembe Flour Mills Limited, in destination Nairobi, with 28,124 bags. So really, this is a brief storyline about the importation, that now that we have the license to import, and we also have consideration of the KPA about the taxation. No Kenyan is going to starve until our natural crop produce is back on track. Your questions?
What do you
Maswali?
What do you know in terms of when the prices will stabilize, and when the prices will come down from the current prices? And how many so far? How many bags have you dispatched?
Fine. The number of bags we dispatched. As I've said, we've received 300 bags so far in the last 3 days. We've so far been able to dispatch 2/3 or 3/4 of that. That means 200 bags. They're already out with the sawmillers. And I've read it out. They're out with the sawmillers in Mombasa, in Athi River, in Machakos, in Nairobi. So the market chain is working. Now, stabilization of prices, market forces respond very quickly. All right, because the prices must have gone up because of scarcity. Now we are floating all this maize into the market. Clearly, it will go at competitive rates. So I'd expect a very quick turnaround. Yes.
Was it complete white maize, or there were a portion of?
There is no yellow maize. There's no yellow maize. All of it is white maize. This is just speculation. I'll give you my written report. And really, it's important for us to verify information like this from the right sources. The MD Kenya Ports Authority, KPA, or his representative is in here. You want to access their offices, their government offices. If you want to access the manifests from the ship, because all this information is declared in there. It's nothing to hide. It's white maize from Mexico. Yes. Another question?
Government to buy,
Sorry?
how much is it going to cost government
To buy the maize? Can we defer that question to the KPA? They're here, they'll answer it. Alright? Yes?
in some terms of
Yeah.
When exactly did they leave Mexico?
Yeah, and I know why you're asking that question, because people will say they're getting rotten maize. Remember, a crop is fresh from when it's harvested. All right, Now, in the old traditional days, you keep that maize for 3 days, it goes rotten, isn't it? But now the world has modernized. We have ways of storing maize, if you like, even for 5 years. All right, and it still remains fresh. This maize was ordered from Mexico a year ago. It's been in storage in South Africa. It's fresh maize. All right, modern methods of storage. So again, there's no point speculating on that. It's fresh maize.
So,
Yeah. The maize is from Mexico. It was grown in Mexico. Do you know how ships operate? You have big ships hanging around in the ocean. It's business. Looking for places to sell maize. So the maize was imported from Mexico into South Africa under storage. All right, and then we are picking it up from there, and that's why we are able to order and get it within 5 days. Durban is not far from where we are. Yes.
Bro,
Yes.
I think on the same question,
Yes.
what Kenyans are not really understanding
Yeah.
is that KRA removes duty on this May.
Yeah.
And it puts position on 4th of May.
Yeah.
Then on 10th of May, the maize arrives. About 6 days. People are wondering
Why is it taking that long?
why it's taken that
Yeah.
long. This maize was in South Africa.
Yeah.
Yeah, why is it coming now?
Well, we don't import maize when we don't need it. You understand? We've run out of maize now. We have a crisis, so we import it. Remember, all expenditure from government is coming from taxpayers' money, isn't it? Yeah, so we want to be careful how we're spending it. It's pointless for us buying stuff that we don't need in here. But anyhow, in terms of the duration, there are processes to go through, and as you can see, it's being pumped now. Yeah, the facility we have in here will not transfer maize from the ship to the silos when it is wet. So, like for instance, yesterday we couldn't pump. But today, God willing, as you say here in the cozy inshallah, we have a whole day. All right, and we'll pump all of it out. So the delay, and I mean, occasionally we also temper our impatience. All right, it hasn't taken 6 days, because for the last 4 days we've been pumping, and the distribution lines have been working. All right, and we'll continue to do that every day. Yes.
Yes, I think my question is not about the offloading.
Yeah.
It's about the arrival time. The KRA is removed, allowed that window of May.
Yeah.
Then on the 10th of May,
Yeah.
the maize was here already.
10th of May.
People are
Yeah.
wondering,
10th of May. No. 10th of May is 5 days ago, isn't it?
Yes.
We're on the 15th.
Yes.
We have been offloading this maize over the last 3 days. What is the delay? A day or two? Come
I
on.
think when the ship came,
Yeah,
the
it doc
offloading started the other day.
3 days ago. Yeah, exactly.
So my question is,
Yeah.
it's not about the offloading.
Yeah.
It took a lot of time. It took a very short time for the maize to be imported after.
Yeah.
So does it mean someone was speculating and they
No. You know what I say? Facts and figures. Mathematics doesn't lie, isn't it? Yeah. Let's look at the dates. The maize landed here on when, according to you? We quote you in the press, according to you. 10th of May. Today is 15th of May. 5 days later. All right, Yeah, we have been, the voyage is 5 days, all right? And then in here, we have been offloading it over the last 3 days. Okay, so what are the figures then? So the exemption happened on 10th of May. 4th of May. Yeah, 4th of May. All right, the exemption 4th of May, right? Importation took 5 days. That isn't, there's nothing you can do about a ship in the ocean, all right? 5 days. So it arrives here effectively on the 10th of May. So far, we can't complain, isn't it? We started pumping it out and distributing the day after. Where is the delay?
Yes, let me just simplify that question.
Yes, that's PS for Transport Paul Mwangi answering questions from journalists there at the port of Mombasa, where he's addressing them with regard to the shipment of maize that has arrived, and it's already being distributed to millers. Of course, we'll bring you more updates from that particular press briefing. We now want to take a break, but when we return, we'll be discussing the entry into the political fray by musicians. We'll be having in studio Francis Amisi, also known as Frasha, and also Bwana Ben Gedai, he of the Mafataro fame. Also in studio will be Joy Mdivo, will be our analyst for that particular session. Let's now take a break. Citizen Extra continues.